You hear it before you see it. A low cough in the dark, somewhere past the firelight. Every muscle in your body locks. You don't move, you don't breathe. For most of human history, this wasn't a metaphor for stress. This was Tuesday night. For roughly 2 million years, your ancestors lived as prey. Not occasionally, constantly. Lions, leopards, hyenas, saber-toothed cats, giant eagles big enough to carry off a toddler. You were not the apex predator of your world. You were a mid-sized, slow, weakly clawed primate on an open savanna full of things that wanted to eat you. So how did a soft-skinned animal with no claws, no fangs, and no fur thick enough to matter end up surviving all of it? You survived predators not by fighting them, but by becoming impossible to predict. Paleoanthropologist Robert Sussman spent years studying primate fossils and the marks predators left on them. For decades, scientists had assumed early humans were dominant hunters almost from the start. Sussman's evidence said otherwise. Bite marks on early hominid fossils, the kind found at South African cave sites like Sterkfontein and Swartkrans, match the puncture patterns of leopards and saber-toothed cats. Something was regularly killing and eating your ancestors, not hunting alongside them. Hunting them, you weren't born dominant. You were born desperate, and desperation turned out to be a decent teacher. The first survival tool was simple: group vigilance. A solitary primate on open ground is a snack with legs. A group of 30, with several pairs of eyes always scanning the horizon, is a much harder target. Vervet monkeys still do this. Different alarm calls for snakes, eagles, and leopards, each one triggering a different evasive response. Your ancestors almost certainly had some version of it. Constant scanning, constant whispered warnings. A habit of staying alive, passed down by the people who managed to stay alive. Picture it, dusk on the savannah around 1.8 million years ago. The light drops fast here, no streetlights, no long twilight, just orange sky collapsing into black. Your group moves with purpose, not panic. Someone near the back keeps glancing at the tall grass to the left, where the wind isn't quite moving the way it should be. A child gets pulled toward the center without a word. Nobody has to explain why. Everyone already knows what grass moving wrong means out here. Fire changed things. Archaeological evidence from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa shows controlled fire use dating back roughly 1 million years, among the earliest confirmed fire sites anywhere. Before fire, night was undefended. After fire, night became survivable. Big cats are mostly nocturnal hunters with excellent low-light vision and a deep aversion to flame. A fire wasn't just warmth, it was a line predators didn't want to cross. Fire alone didn't make you safe though, it made you safer, and your ancestors knew the difference. The second tool, sleeping in groups, in defensible spots, with someone always awake. Caves with narrow entrances, cliff overhangs. Anywhere a predator could only come from one direction at a time. Sleep, for most of human history, was never just sleep. It ran on a shift system. Someone was always the lookout, always listening for that cough in the dark. Your ancestors weren't really trying to eliminate danger. They were trying to make it predictable. A predictable threat can be planned around. An unpredictable one can't. So they built layers of predictability into an unpredictable world. Fixed sleeping spots, rotating watches, alarm calls, fire at the edges, until the constant threat of death faded down into something closer to background noise than acute panic. And this worked for a reason that's easy to miss. You weren't fast, you weren't strong, but you were stubbornly cooperative. Anthropologist Sarah Hurdy has spent decades on what she calls cooperative breeding in early humans, the idea that children weren't raised by parents alone, but by a wide network of people sharing the work of watching, feeding, and protecting the vulnerable. A predator doesn't just face one mother defending one child. It faces a whole group that has already decided the child survives. That's not a fair fight for a leopard. There's something stranger underneath all this. The predators that hunted your ancestors weren't just shaping behavior. They were shaping biology. Some researchers think the human startle reflex, that full-body flinch at a sudden noise or shadow, wasn't built for modern life at all. It was tuned, generation after generation, by animals that wanted to eat you. Every time your heart slams against your ribs because a car backfired or a door slammed shut, you're feeling the leftover wiring of an alarm system built for leopards in tall grass. One more scene. Imagine a small group, maybe 25 people, crossing open ground between two patches of safer terrain. This is the most dangerous kind of movement there is. No cover, no high ground, nowhere to retreat to. So they don't move randomly. The strongest, most able-bodied adults take the outer positions. Children and the injured move through the center. Someone walks slightly ahead, scanning. Someone walks slightly behind, doing the same. Nobody invented this in a war college. It's a formation your ancestors used for hundreds of thousands of years before anyone wrote anything down, because the groups that skipped it didn't survive long enough to pass it on. Polly Wiesner's research among the Ju-Hoan-Si people of the Kalahari adds another piece. She found that storytelling around the fire wasn't just entertainment. A large share of nighttime conversation was about social rules, cooperation, and shared knowledge, including, very plausibly, where danger had last been seen and what worked against it. Threat information didn't just live in instinct. It lived in stories, passed person to person, generation to generation, around a fire that was itself a kind of defense. Humans never outmuscled the predators that hunted them. They out-organized them. Group vigilance, fire, defensible sleeping arrangements, cooperative child-rearing, knowledge passed down through stories. None of it was physical. All of it was social. The animals hunting early humans had sharper claws, faster legs, better night vision, and stronger jaws, and they still couldn't keep up with a species that had figured out how to think together. Now, look at your own life. You probably haven't worried about a leopard in the grass today, but you still flinch at the dark. You still feel that prickle on the back of your neck alone, somewhere unfamiliar at night. You still feel safer in a group than alone, at a concert, on a hike, walking home late without ever choosing to feel that way. Call it old software, still quietly running long after the predators it was built for mostly disappeared. You hear it before you see it. A low cough in the dark, somewhere past the firelight. Every muscle in your body locks. You don't move, you don't breathe. And somewhere under the modern life you're living now, that same circuitry is still standing watch, not because you're in danger anymore, but because for almost the entirety of human history, you were, and your body never quite got the memo that the leopard left.